The feeling that you need to hide something, the feeling that you're alone in what you're going through, or that what you're going through is shameful to some degree, and so better to hide it away from the world rather than to expose it and therefore lose this sense of yourself as something not to be pitied, is something that I'm facing right now. And the dynamic that I'm kind of centering on is the spectrum between pity and envy, because I wasn't sure what word to pick there, and I think that there's in some ways it could be fair to say I'm both holding on to a desire to be envied and running away from a fear of being pitied, because either would, well, let's say the pity, to be pitied indicates that there's something bad about my existence, some flaw that will always mar my experience, and that's just really hard for me to hold on to. And then at the same time, because of that, or at least intertwined with that, is the idea that envy indicates some great quality to my existence that makes life worth living, that means my life in particular is is a good life, one that I would pick if I could do it all again. And the more that I feel envied and the less that I feel pitied, the more secure I feel in the hypothetical scenario that I'd make that decision to pick my life. Now, it's not just about this, this spectrum from pity to envy, but it is one particular framework for thinking about living life again that sticks to my mind. Of course, there's also to be loved or to not be loved, or to feel, pleasure versus pain on a more consistent basis. These are all other ways to analyze whether life is really worth living, right? But I haven't heard many people speak about this uh, desire for envy or this fear of pity. So I'll speak to it because it's something I feel viscerally, especially as things go wrong in life. And I was having a conversation with somebody who told me that life is just a process of finding out what universe that we're in. And it's very painful to find out that you're in a subpar universe. Let's call it below average. If the 50%, the median universe was just middle of the road, can't love it, can't hate it, it really hurts to find out that you're stuck in one of those universes that's below that line. Of course, these are all like each of those lines is a dimension in a multidimensional way of thinking of the universe. It's not that, okay, just because this happened, we're in the 39% universe, right? Or on the other side, just because this great thing happened, we're in the 90% universe. No, it's more like, okay, in this domain, I'm 90, in this domain, I'm 20, in this domain, I'm 40, it's in this domain, I'm 80. It's like you're building up a 2K character or a Skyrim character and you got to pick his stats. It's and I'm wondering how the attention that you give to certain things influences your own conception of what that, let's call it um, the array of dimensions by which your universe takes shape. What you focus on informs how many of those dimensions you actually allow to, you know, add value or subtract value from your life. Because obviously, or let me not say obviously, but it seems that there's just too many dimensions to really observe, too many ways to think about life, to factor everything in to your understanding of if your life has value or not. But outside of just like all the philosophical musing about this, the reason I want to talk about it is because all of this ties back into the way that we interact with other people. And then I'll say, for me, the way that I tend to isolate myself or guard myself or even lie, often by omission rather than overtly, but still, I don't speak my truth because I'm afraid of reminding myself of those dimensions of my life which are less than par, that are subpar. Now, I think that there's a lot of mental cognitive biases that prevent us from really seeing when something that we have is good rather than getting fixated on the negative in it. One example could be finances. As a United States citizen with a decently paying job, I am in the global, I don't know the exact number, but let's say I'm in the global 10%. However, within my community, I don't know again the exact statistic, but I'm not in my community's 10%. So the zoom and the aperture with which you place your attention can inform what your perspective is on, let's say, what that dimension value would be, what the value would be for the financial security dimension, right? If that number were to exist, objectively speaking, it would exist separate from what my subjective perception of it would be. Let's say it objectively is, I'm in the top 20th percentile, so an 80 out of 100. That doesn't necessarily correlate to the way that I'm going to view it, right? Because of my surroundings, I might say, well, I feel like a 30. I feel like 70% of people have it better than me in the dimension of financial security. And again, without veering too far off into that specific idea, really what I want to come back to is the way that our self-perception of how things are going in our lives makes us raise our guards, makes us isolate ourselves, makes us hide from the world and from other people. When you look around and you take walks and you look at a lot of people, you're on the train, there's this sense of, well, I'll speak to me. There's a sense that I don't actually, like the whole pity envy thing breaks down, at least the pity part, because it's really hard for me to say what I want to say because I'm afraid that I'm just too biased in my sort of, I don't want to call it pessimistic, but my fatalistic or, I don't know, stoic informed view of things. But it seems to me like when you just look at somebody, when you look at their eyes and their brow as they're sitting on the train on their way home to work, they seem to be carrying some load that you could call pitiable. Now again, it could just be that they're tired. It could be me projecting. It definitely is me projecting to some extent, or at least I think that whether I'm projecting on it very slightly or very greatly, there is some projection going on. But when I look at people, the idea that I am someone to be pitied, it just breaks down. I recognize that, first of all, none of us really know what the others are going through, and so the idea of someone pitying me is stupid, because even if I were to say everything I could about my experience, there would still be so much lost in that translation that it wouldn't be accurate, and they wouldn't actually be able to understand. And so whether someone pities me or whether someone doesn't, it's more reflective of them. I've seen pictures of people in dire poverty, and I've pitied them. And maybe that's right, or at least maybe that's valid. Maybe there's validity to that. But I was looking at them through a manufactured image on a screen meant to push me to give my money. So really, it was an advertisement, and so really, it seems dangerous to let that shape my worldview because it's propaganda. They're trying to portray something. But regardless, back to the train. When you're just looking at people, it doesn't feel right to 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 really frame the world in pity and envy. As far as envy goes, though, I mean, again, it's shallow. It's shallow. I don't meet people and I look at them and I say, oh man, I wish I were you. I genuinely can't think of a person that I've done that with since I've matured. More specifically, since I was maybe 22 or something. I don't know. You just get to a place where you see the crust of a person and you understand that we're all apish and silly, really. We're all silly, and gross and beautiful. And yet, there's this feeling that I really do think this is coming to this idea of propaganda and media and imagery, but it's just this projection of the world that we see, that we're constantly shown through advertising, that makes us desire more, that amplifies what we think we ought to be, the way we ought to live. And it's isolating because you measure yourself up and you can't measure up to that. You can't. Nobody can be Old Spice guy or, insert fantastic ad hero here, like, the Dos Equis man. Nobody can be that guy. And so even if you're not consciously trying to be those, right? Because nobody really is, but these inform what you view as, or let's say the material that you use to inform your reward functions or your loss functions. Am I doing well? Do I deserve to be happy? Or am I doing poorly? Do I need to reorient? And I think that they've become this big cognitive bias within the collective consciousness, because we've all seen the Dos Equis man, we've all seen Old Spice guy, we've all seen some sort of representation on the TV over and over and over again, drilled into our head. Really, it was trying to sell us beer or deodorant, but on a deeper level, it was influencing our self-image and making us think we'll be better off if we drink Dos Equis or if we wear Old Spice. And I feel like I'm in this mental loop because I know this, and yet I am just within it. I'm just embedded in this advertising society, where I'm just beamed images all the time on my phone, on the train, on other people's bodies with their clothes, the way other people speak. It bleeds into language and thought. It's just, and I don't want to let this worldview consume me, but I don't know what to do about it because it's so effective at earning capital for the companies that do it that it doesn't seem like it'll just stop, definitely not on its own. And then to regulate it, there's this dynamic of freedom in my country that feels like it's become malignant. But at the same time, the idea of control feels doomed as well. So there's are we to hope that freedom will take us to the promised land, or are we to try to impose a promised land, which throughout history has gone very poorly? Although I don't know that like there's no examples in history of a movement that was properly integrated with a desire to manifest wisdom and benevolence holistically for all life on earth. You know, you could look at Mao or Hitler or, insert utopic rhetorician with political ambition here, right? There's a lot of people you could think and say, well, this person said that they were trying to build a utopia and they failed and things went horribly. But the question is, were they really trying to build utopia eagerly, or was that just their rhetoric? Now, there's also the issue of cult behavior, and it seems like as soon as you just get to a certain level of ability to manipulate the fabric of society, things just take a left turn somehow. That's why the idea of sort of decentralization of societal trajectory shifting is important, right? Not one person should try too vehemently to take an active role in shifting society's trajectory, because it just isn't, it doesn't seem like the way this is meant to go. Society is a collective of billions of people, right? You wouldn't expect a single neuron to hijack the brain. You would expect, okay, this part of the brain is going to take over for this moment. You need a collective, and you need that power to be decentralized, it seems. And so that's why it's important not to isolate yourself in these feelings. And I don't have this worked out again, but this is sort of my attempt to manifest these things in my mind. And so maybe this can be used to even just personally clear my head, but also in some way, shape, or form, if anybody ever listens, to bounce off your thoughts about these ideas. Because if you just hold it all in, the system goes on. And I don't have a better solution than at least playing in this mental realm right now, the realm of ideas. Although I realize the limits to it, eventually there needs to be action. And I'm a little bit choked up by my fear of projecting my bias and slipping up and being pitied and exposing that I don't have my shit together, and that I'm not worthy of envy in my silly desire to get external reward by, people pitying themselves rather than pitying me. It's a zero-sum game, and it's not one I want to continue playing, but it's one I realize I have been, and so I'm working to break free from it.